Yep, let's go.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Whoops. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
We could
Okay.
hear before too.
I see. No, I had you guys on mute. So okay. All right. Today is Monday, December 17th, and this is the Kubernetes CSI implementation meeting. Jumping right into our outstanding 113 tasks, we need to release all our official sidecar containers. So I think external snapshotter is done. External attacher and external provisioner have been cut, but the images need to be tagged.
They're tagged, and
Okay.
not only that, but I also added them to the release notes so that people know where to get them.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. Whoops.
Can we put a
Call this
deprecated
done.
note on the old driver registrar? I had
I
something
done that
happen.
also.
Oh, perfect. Way ahead of us. Thanks, Luis.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So that's done.
I added it to the notes here too, the deprecation link, and I put it in yellow.
All right. So no driver registrar is released, images tagged, and deprecation is there's a deprecation notice. And on the old repo, is there a deprecation
It's
notice?
on the main page of the old repo.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, so this is done. The old driver registrar.
The only thing is in cluster driver registrar, I have not tagged it yet. I wanted to ask you what the tag should be, and it should be released or not. I did test it today.
Okay.
So I wanted to see if you want just to do 101 and release it.
Yep, 101 sounds good.
Okay. All right. I can do that.
Okay.
Hey, Luis, do you have the example YAML files for the node driver registrar and the cluster driver registrar? I don't know if they're different from the old driver registrar or are they the same?
They are sidecar containers to the. One is supposed to be like in a daemon set with the driver, and one is a stateful set with like a attacher and so on. They're not different than before. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
But that's a good question.
There's I think both with node driver registrar and cluster driver registrar, we need to update the documentation and RBAC examples and all of that.
Yeah, that's true. Let's keep that pending for the documentation.
Okay.
I'll
let's
update
see.
that.
Okay. For the old for the node driver registrar, I added a item here. Should we deprecate or even remove the old driver registration mechanism?
Oh, that's a great question.
You mean the repo itself?
No, the style.
So this basically before, if you didn't pass in a kubelet registration directory, it would fall back and to behavior that would go and modify the node object. But I think we're not supporting. Are we still supporting that way of registering drivers in Kubernetes?
No, I think I guess technically if you completely disable kubelet plugin registration mechanism,
right.
that is a way that you could do things, but whether we want to support that or not is a different question.
Isn't that how E2E runs without any of this stuff enabled?
No, I think E2E uses kubelet device plugin registration now.
Okay. And the new API objects?
No.
This is not for the API objects.
Oh, okay.
This is if you don't have kubelet plugin registration mechanism exposed. So then what happens is the kubelet will fall back from using the kubelet plugin mechanism for discovery to just kind of hard coding the path for where the socket should exist, and it'll talk to the driver over that socket. So on the driver side, because kubelet plugin registration doesn't happen, the sidecar container for driver registrar tries to modify the node directly with the get node ID information. I think we should go ahead and deprecate that because we should not support that. Everything should go through kubelet plugin registration mechanism.
It's
Okay.
something we can do for the next version. Huh?
Yeah.
So maybe like, can we deprecate it in 1.0.1 and then remove it in the next version?
We
I
have
think
to put in documentation. Yeah, that's fine.
that should be fine, or we could just make a clean cut and say 10x doesn't support this.
Okay, that's not deprecating. That's actually removing.
Yeah. And if you want to use it, you can use it with 0.x, which there are older sidecar containers for that already.
But what that would mean removing it from the code too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can we just deprecate it so we can release?
That's fine. I mean, it's not a blocker, so that's an easier path. Let's do it. Call it more deprecated and then remove it in the next release.
Okay, so let's deprecate it in 1.0.1. Remove it in, I don't know, 1.0.2 or 1.1.
Yeah, 1.1 master. Let's remove it from master, but not from the branch.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's see. Can we update, Luis, can you update the release notes for the node driver registrar to
For deprecation?
indicate? Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Let's do this. In the meantime, though, I guess the thing is the documentation and RBAC rules are kind of funky right now because it's like in this half mode. Should we just clean up those? Should we, even though we deprecate it, should we just remove it from all the documentation?
I think that the documentation should be 1.0 specific for now for the future, my opinion. And then any other stuff should just go back to the old, I don't know, just remove it. So it sounds to me like you would just clean it up to the right way.
Okay, so we should also clean up documentation to remove references to this behavior. And we should do this now.
Well, it's kind of isn't 1.1 already tagged and includes the old RBAC rules? So if people now look at the release and they look at the deployment rules, they will find the outdated rules. Does it mean that we need to do a new tag with the updated RBAC rules?
It depends. If the repo has RBAC rules in it.
It does.
Oh, then
yes,
correct.
Yeah, but that was the whole plan, that each component gets released together with the corresponding correct RBAC rules. And if that hasn't happened in this case, and I think it probably was just missed, that means doing a new release.
Aye.
Okay, so we should do a 1.0.2 then.
That would be the cleanest solution, yes.
Aye.
Are they?
I'm
a bit confused. For the split up binary, are we introducing new RBAC, or is this because we shouldn't be introducing?
We're not
new
introducing
after
new. We're not introducing new RBACs, but the RBACs that are there are untested and unsupported and might not even be necessary.
I see. Okay, that'd be good because okay.
Yeah, we are basically telling people if they want to use this sidecar container, they should use the RBAC rules that come with it.
Right.
That's how we document what RBAC rules are needed by the sidecar containers. And in this case, it's basically outdated and incorrect.
Okay, so we'll just clean up the RBAC and documentation, but then save removing the actual code for the next release, or do you want to also remove the whole functionality?
Either way is okay with me.
I don't have a strong
folks a warning
opinion.
if they want, and then deprecate it in the next one. It's not a huge blocker either way.
Yeah, because I guess if we remove the RBACs, but we still support it in the code, then someone might still try to use it and it won't work.
Right, right.
Okay, let's just clean it all up now. It shouldn't be that hard.
This is for node register?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Can someone volunteer to take this on?
Normally I would do this, but the next month for me, month and a half, is going to be very tight.
Yeah, that's no problem. We should find someone else to take this on. I might have a person in mind. I will talk to them. They've been, Jose has been wanting to contribute to stuff, so.
Jose from Red Hat?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know him. Yes.
I will talk with him.
I'm also visiting some colleagues here in Finland this week, and some of them are supposed to be encouraged to contribute upstream, but have been reluctant so far. Perhaps I can find someone, but better try with people who are more familiar with it already.
Okay, sure. All right. Next, okay, back to cluster driver register. Okay, so this is not done yet. Let me remove this. So the secret logging has been backported, and we just need to release it. Is that right? And I guess, we should do the cleanup here too.
Yeah, back cleanup. Okay. So I'm not going to touch it then until somebody does that. But it, the PR for sanitizing the logs are in the the release 1 branch now too. So.
Okay, awesome. Okay, last sidecar is the Liveness Probe. So, is Sergey on the line? It looks like Sergey tested it with 1.0.0, but it doesn't contain the cherry pick for the secret logging thing. So I think we need to retest it again with the latest 1.0.
Okay, I don't have time to do that.
That's fine. I will try to find Sergey and ask him to try that out. Let's see. Okay. The next is the secret logging for 0.3 spec. We need to, I think currently we have this 0.1 branch, so we would need to cherry pick that change there so we can get all the sidecars to pick it up. And Patrick, you had a question.
Yeah. Or we just delete the branch and keep a linear release history for that particular repository, because there's really no technical reason why we need to branch. The current head is master, and that has exactly the content that is needed for the older releases. We could just tag that as 1.0.1 and be done.
Yes.
What's going on here? We have the 1.0 release. We have the 0.3 release. This is saying going all the way back to 0.1?
No. This is the CSI libutils has a 0.1 branch.
Okay.
I think this is corresponding. I think
it doesn't correspond to anything. It's its own release, basically.
Yeah. And Patrick's question is do we really need to have a branch yet?
It's good practice. It's clean. In the future, when you need it, you're
But
going
you
to
can
realize
always-
it before you actually think you need it.
But you can always create a branch if you need it.
You
Right
can-
now, we don't need it.
You can always create a branch if you need it, but like it's easier if you've already had a branch and you've kind of built the discipline ahead of time.
Yeah, but if this for this particular repo, we are not doing any development that isn't suitable for older releases. I would argue in this case, the branch is just overhead. And we can look at this one pull request that I have open for cherry picking, which, no, I think in this case I didn't have a branch for cherry picking, but for host path, we have exactly the problem that we now have master, which is good for release, but we still have this one pending pull request that needs extra work from people to approve.
So is the proposal to just do tags off of the master branch?
For this CSI libutils, that's exactly my proposal. And that needs, of course, a bit more discipline with what we put into master. But this is a simple repository where I think we can always keep master in a stable state where we can just do tags on that branch, on the master branch.
This is which repo again?
CSI libutils.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I prefer the consistency between different repos. So you know, for you, definitely it makes sense if you were the only maintainer for this. But what I imagine is new people coming in and not understanding what's going on here, and
in that case, we can just if that happens, we end up in a state where we can't release master as the next tag. And then we start cherry picking. But we don't start cherry picking in advance when we don't need it.
Okay, I mean that's a fair enough argument. If you'd like, go with it.
I guess the main thing is that, so we already have this 0.1 branch. Are we able to delete it?
What happens to the tags that we had off this 0.1 branch?
There is none. It was tagged on master.
Oh, I thought the initial.
And that's fine. I mean that's just one commit, and that's release. There's no.
Okay, as long as the tags are intact, I think that's the only concern.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the conclusion is we don't need the 0.1 branch. Just tag off a master.
For now.
For now. Yeah. All right. So then I guess I can go ahead and tag them. Actually, I might not have permissions.
Can we just leave the 0.1 branch just in case? I feel like once we decide that there is a breaking change that we need to go in, then we're going to have to do a lot of overhead to be like, okay.
Okay.
Why? How was the branch created? Who does that?
I mean, it's simple. It's just create off a branch off of master right now. It's literally like 3 clicks.
Okay, so let's then tag a 0.2. Off the head. What happened? Okay. So let's do that. I don't think I have tagging permissions on this repo.
Also, let's not call it 0.2 unless it's functionally different. Let's call it 0.1.x. Is it bug fixes or feature changes?
It's adding the secret.
Yeah,
it's adding the secret logging for 0.3 spec.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay, that seems like it's a functional change, so 0.2 makes sense. I can help with the tagging.
Okay.
I'm kind of going back and forth on whether to delete the release 01. Then if we don't create a release 02, then it becomes kind of ugly. So I might just end up deleting both of them. I'll take a look at that. You can send it to me.
Okay, awesome. Let me do that. All right, and once it's tagged, then we can update all of the sidecars again. I've also asked Jose to help look at that. Although now that I think about it, I'm currently asking him to do a lot of stuff. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'll figure it out. Okay, and the 1.0 stuff is done. Next,
The host path driver needs an update.
Yes.
We don't have a dedicated entry under the sidecar containers that we've been discussing previously, but there is something about updating the end-to-end tests, and there I added this one blocker because the current host path 1.100 release doesn't pass the tests because it accepts block volumes when it should reject them.
yeah, that's right. Is it under
Yeah, I
here?
approved that just now.
Yeah, that's where we are currently looking. Yeah. So it was merged into master, but because we have diverged from master and the release branch, it wasn't in the release branch. And
Okay.
of course, it still needs to be tagged, and the image needs to be pushed to K.
Okay, so after this, new host path driver needs to be released and image pushed. I guess Luis or Saad, would one of you guys have time to look at this?
Yep, I can help.
Cool.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and once that image is available, I'll update this pull request for the end-to-end testing so that we actually have everything
Okay.
updated to the latest images.
Awesome. All right. Going back to the flaky tests, I think we've mitigated the flaky tests for now. I think, Saad, you have one thing that might be good to backport the event stuff, event throttling.
Is my name still on there? Can you throw something with my name on there? That'll be a reminder that I need to do this.
Okay.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Let's see. The rest, I think, Vlad, you were working on the actual driver registration connection thing.
Yeah.
Is that?
We never went back to that. That's number 76, right?
Yeah.
Page right there.
Is that able?
We never went back to that.
Yeah, I
sorry.
think because we mitigated the failing tests with other fixes, so like this is not as high of an issue anymore. But I think it would still be good to do something here.
Oh, absolutely. I think if we get to a stable location, this definitely is something we should go back and look overall how we're managing connection and reconnection pretty much everywhere, especially inside Kubernetes and some of the external components. And the code that I have in 76 could be something we kind of follow.
And
do that. But
you were able
we could
to
do that later.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem. I'll put it on the 114 list.
So one thing that we could do for this is do what you're proposing, Vlad, on the new repo for the external. What's the driver registrar? The new one called the node driver registrar. So put your fix in for node driver registrar. See if it fixes the issue. Let it bake a little bit, and then grab it and put it into an external repo as a util. So the same util repo that Patrick has. And then we can pull that code into the other repos as an external dependency.
Okay. Okay. So a couple things going on. I did start to work over the last week. I split out host path. I paste a pull request. I think it's under somewhere. And basically what I did is take the code that's in host path, put it in the standalone repository, and got that to work, preparing for what we talked about, which is splitting out host path and then document and put all the YAML in one location, and then so we can point to that. Just to confirm, your ask is also split out that connection, reconnection
Yeah, that
the
can be
code.
like a second or third step. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
immediate. P0 is let's get the 1 minute delay thing fixed, which it sounds like you already have a PR doing that. We didn't get that PR merged because it was close to the edge and it seemed kind of scary. So we can maybe
Yeah.
go ahead and port that to
Well,
the new repo, get that merged, start testing it, and then break it into
okay.
a library.
I see. Okay. Yeah, we could do that. Then let's start reviewing 76, so that way I can get some feedback on it, and
Okay. Sean, can you put
and
my
I can
name on
put
there
it
as
in
a
that.
reviewer? Just like put a little sub comment. Saad needs to review or something. Actually, sorry, Vlad, could you move this from driver registrar to node driver registrar? So that driver registrar repo has now been deprecated.
Okay.
So just go ahead and move that PR, and when it's moved, just ping me and I'll help review it.
All right, to no driver registrar. Okay, I could do that.
The code is mostly the same. It's just separated.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Oh, you know what? Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. Let's see. After this, I think this is done now. Is this right? Splitting up driver registrar into two. I guess we kind of tracked that up there. Yeah, I think we're tracking all the work up there, so this is kind of a duplicate item. Okay. Next is syncing up the YAMLs.
Yeah, I just realized I was talking about host path, not driver registrar, when I made my comment about splitting out the host path into a standalone repository, and I have I have a pull request number 1 to do that, and that has been tested, and that repository has all the YAMLs that it needs to function. I'm working on a script, as we talked last time, to basically launch the host path, which will be based on the documented steps that we have to do that. Yes?
I have one question about this example and what happens for releases when we put it into that repository. That's at the top of a document where I basically try to summarize some concern that I had. If that example is in the host path driver repository and gets tagged together with the source code, then what happens if some sidecar container version changes? If we do it like this, you basically have to do a new host path driver release with an updated example, and the only change in that new release would be the documentation change.
And I think that makes sense because this is the when we release the host path driver, this is the version of all the sidecars that we have tested and validated the host path driver with.
Okay.
So we're in agreement that the host path documentation should also be updated. That's what we're saying, right?
So whenever there's a new sidecar and we want some functionality in that new sidecar, then we have to, test the driver with the new version of the sidecar, and then we can release a new driver with it. Because the driver is not just the driver part, it's the whole packaging.
Right.
Okay. So if that's the goal, then yeah, this works. There's a slight cyclic dependency, I think, in that the YAML file needs to reference a host path image that doesn't exist yet at the time when the YAML file gets committed to the repository. But I guess that's for a development branch. That's fine.
I guess we might need two YAMLs. One YAML that tests stable, and one YAML that tests latest.
That's fine. Testing isn't the problem. It's that you get a slightly inconsistent time period when someone looks at the repository and the tag source code, and we haven't pushed the corresponding image yet. That should only be a short period of time, but you still need to update the YAML file based on a version that hasn't been tagged yet.
Yeah, it is a bit of a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah.
I don't know how other projects do this, but
you could do it by treating the host path sidecar container as a separate component that you only release if you do code changes, and then have another repository, whether it's current docs one or something else, where you do the documentation and the example update. So basically, you could treat the example as something that happens downstream and not as part of the host path release. That's the other model.
I understand what you're saying.
That's kind of the model that we had with the examples so far, where we had different components and the documentation pulled it together.
I think this was actually
host path. Go ahead.
Oh, this was actually something that David brought up along last week in our meeting. He was suggesting we move to a model where, let's see, what was it? To move the documentation for each sidecar into each sidecar repo so that they are versioned along with the sidecar. Otherwise, we have this issue that we have now where like our CSI docs are terribly out of date because we keep on updating the sidecars and not updating the CSI docs.
Yeah, I understand Patrick's concern is that now, because currently we're having, for instance, for RBAC, we're having to point to a stable version location for RBAC rules for host path, for instance, for external provisioner, external attachment, etc. So if those referenced entities change, then we have to come back to the documented or scripted portion of host path to make sure that they're pointing to the newer thing. And I think it's something we're going to have to do anyway.
That's the other problem. The image version number is one thing. That's what I mentioned earlier. But if you have a URL somewhere in documentation, then that URL includes a Git commit, then you actually really have a problem because you don't have the final commit at the time when you do the commit of the documentation. That's a chicken and egg problem that you can't solve, that you can't break.
So what I have planned, what I wanted to do is, instead of pointing to a commit hash, it looks like a lot of the things that we're depending on are versioned with, for instance, the what's it called, the objects, the API objects definition, the CRDs. They're released on the 1.0, and there's an actual branch. So I plan to point directly on the branch.
That would
but
work.
There may be instances where that's not available.
You don't even need a tag, a branch. You could have a tag, and GitHub will give you the right file. That's doable.
Yeah, it's a tag. Yeah.
It's doable, but then you have the same problem that this tag doesn't exist yet at the time when you commit. It gets created later.
Right. There will be instances where that will happen, and what we might end up doing is tiered how we update our components because of the dependencies. Because some components are more primitive than others. Like, for instance, our attachers and provisioners they are dependent on by the driver. So maybe those lower level components should always be updated first, and then be committed and be stabilized, and then update the drivers so that we're in a better position with the references. Okay, so I'll finalize the host path, get it to a point where we can test it, and then we could continue with the YAML updates, etc. And
Okay, cool.
the script to
so
make
is
sure
this
that that can run.
is this PR
Yes.
ready for review?
No, I have a whip on it right now. But welcome to, because it's a lot, because I had to move vendor and everything else, so it's pretty big. I'll try to kind of filter out the commits just for the tiny code changes that went in, not code change, but like make file and references, etc., that I had to update. But anybody, if you want to start looking at it right now, that's great, but it's not quite ready.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep.
All right. So we already talked about updating the E2Es. Next is updating our docs. I think, let's see, Luis is not here. Saad, do you have a plan on how we want to tackle updating these docs? I think people are already starting to use 1.0 or trying to use 1.0 and they're so confused.
I was just going to walk through the entire documentation and overhaul everything one by one. That was kind of the only plan that I have. If anybody has a better plan, let me know.
Okay.
But it's just brute force work, honestly.
Okay. Do you need help from anyone to work on this?
I'm going to lean on Luis. If anybody else is interested, let me know and I can reach out to you as well.
Okay. Awesome. Then we have the blog post.
Yes, the deadline for that is early January, and I will have something ready by then.
Okay, cool. Going back to our miscellaneous updates. I guess we talked about this too. This is the dependency of host path against the sidecars.
Yeah. I think we are done with that point.
Yeah. So I guess maybe let's put the conclusion in these notes, so we have this for reference. So, Vlad, can you summarize the conclusion again? Vlad, are you on mute?
Sorry, I was on mute. So the conclusion is for host path, it's gonna live in its own repository. B, we're gonna bring in the YAMLs, all the configuration YAMLs, and a script so that you can completely deploy host path as needed, and then we'll have examples that's attached directly to the host path repository, and as dependent components change, we'll have to update those. We'll have to update those documentation.
Okay, so the YAMLs are linked to specific versions.
So we got to make sure we're talking about two types of YAML. There are those YAMLs that we're dependent on from a host path point of view. For instance, YAMLs for the API objects, for the CRDs, or the RBAC YAMLs. They live elsewhere, so yes, they're going to be pointed to a different to a version of those YAMLs, but we also have YAMLs that defines the host path itself, the host path deployment itself.
Mm-hmm.
Those will always be part of the the driver.
So I guess the container images, those versions will also be fixed.
Yes, the container images after basically how we do them today. Yes. And right now,
And then
just
to
to keep
get
moving, I'm
around,
pointing them to. Go ahead.
go ahead. Oh,
No, I
so
was just
to
going to point
deal,
out right now. I think we
sorry.
have a massive delay. Sorry, go ahead.
So to deal with the cyclic dependency, are we just saying there's going to be a short amount of time where the tag might not actually exist, but the docs are pointing to it?
I think what we probably should adopt is update the documentation or the examples, I should say, after the tags exist, just to avoid confusion if possible.
Okay.
What about David's proposal of having everything tucked together on the repo so that when you cut a release, documentation is up to date?
Well, so there's
that's kind of what we're doing. Go ahead.
so there's a documentation and cuts for the sidecars,
Right.
but then there's the drivers that depend on the sidecars.
Right.
And I think for those, we're saying we don't want to like automatically just, source from master for the sidecars because we haven't vetted those images.
That makes sense. So it sounds like to me, if the documentation lives with each of the repos, the sidecar containers have their own documentation living side by side inside the repo. Then whenever a version of a sidecar container is cut, that tag points to the correct documentation as well as code. And then once that gets imported by a driver, the driver is then going to also, while it's doing the updated dependency, it can update its own documentation as appropriate, as well as its own deployment files. And then whenever you cut a release of that driver, it has documentation, RBAC, everything is accurate.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, this should not be. It should. I was just going to say this should not be magical. I mean, we're not doing anything crazy. So the dependency for the driver are the external components. We update the external components as needed, and then we update the driver to point to the proper version. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the only last thing is that the host path driver itself, that image has a chicken and egg problem. There's going to be a short amount of time when we reference, say, host path driver 2.0, but 2.0 has not been tagged yet for the host path driver image.
Is that in the YAML or is that in the documentation?
In the YAML. Or I guess the documentation. Because the problem is we want to release the document, the YAML and the documentation at the same time that we tag that version.
So then
why don't we not
the
tag
image should go in first?
Yeah.
Because when the example is not part of a release. I think that was my understanding.
Right. Because the example.
You go to it.
That makes sense.
Well, I mean, yeah, it does make sense, but I mean, if we're talking about a process, I don't know how automated or not automated it is.
So I mean, that's fine. Like we just cut. You update to what you anticipate the tag is going to look like on the master branch, and then when you cherry pick that to the release branch, it's not been released yet. And then when you cut a tag, then as soon as the tag is cut, it automatically kicks off the process of creating those containers. So.
Yeah, so there will be like a very short amount of time when we've released the thing and the documentation points to a container that doesn't exist. And I think that's okay. Yeah. Once we get like a good CI process going, I think that time should be shortened.
Right.
Agreed.
Right. Okay. So we're all in agreement. Host path will have its own example. We'll use a README as documentation, and will carry its own YAML and point to its dependent RBAC YAMLs.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Let's see. Next is the share repo for common code. Was there anything else we wanted to do here?
No, I think you can just delete that point. We're done.
Okay. Oops. Oops.
I did have a
Pre-submit
question.
testing of other repos. Yeah.
Question about the external shared lib repo. It is something we're actively using, or is this?
We want to start using this, and
okay.
we want to start putting. So right now it has the secret logging utility. I think the next thing that might be good to put in there is all the connection, like RPC connection stuff that all of the sidecars just copy paste.
Right. And the reason why I ask is when I was splitting out host path into its own, there is a package called, I forgot what it's called, Common, CSI Common, that looks like it may be used by the other drivers. So I was trying to figure out where, because right now I'm just pointing it back to where it is originally, which is inside that /drivers. But that location sounds like it's a good location for it.
I was told beginning of this year that CSI Common is basically deprecated and not maintained anymore.
That's interesting because I'll keep an eye out because I think it is being used.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Okay.
Perhaps we didn't get the message out that people shouldn't be doing that anymore, but I think no one has touched it for quite a while.
Okay. Well, it's being referenced in somewhere in the host path, and I might be wrong. It might be something else. I don't remember.
Yeah, depending on what it's doing, that could be another candidate to move to the libutils.
Okay. So what it currently has is this generic or default implementation of the CSI interfaces, for example. That's what some other CSI driver reference, and like the host path including. But I found that not particularly useful for trying to understand how CSI works. So the host path example itself is, in my opinion, more complicated than it should be because of this additional generic implementation. And once people start implementing their own CSI driver, I think it would be better for them if they had a complete example that doesn't depend on CSI Common. And then they just copy and modify for the interfaces. So that in my opinion, would make more sense than this generic CSI Common that we have.
So maybe we can open that as like a refactoring issue that we can do on the host path driver.
Yes, I agree.
I've just done it in my own CSI driver. I basically started with the host path driver and eventually just flattened the whole hierarchy and got rid of quite a bit of glue code. And I think it was a step in a better direction. The code is much easier to read and understand now.
Okay, cool.
All right. Next is pre-submit testing in the other repos.
I think we kind of concluded that Travis CI is fine. I'm still not quite sure whether Prow will consider it as a blocker when merging. I haven't seen a definite answer on that particular aspect, or I've not seen it in practice. It would be interesting to create a fake pull request that introduces a bug and that triggers Travis CI and then see whether it can get merged automatically. But then
I believe the Travis stuff is blocking.
But how does Prow know tests are blocking or not? Isn't that something that's usually getting configured?
Yeah, that's a good question.
because some tests can be marked as not required, which means you can run them, you can merge despite test failures. And I don't know into which camp Travis CI falls.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the Travis stuff is configured in Prow. But I have noticed that the Travis CI is blocking on our repos.
Okay. And then just remove the line. I mean, usually it's not an issue. We should notice if there's a bug or
Yeah.
CI failure and then not merge. But I was just curious.
Okay, cool. Next is moving the mount library in Kubernetes out. So yeah, there's a PR out for it, but I think Travis hasn't touched this in a month or more. Vlad, are you able to ping him?
Yeah, I can find out what's going on with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's been no movement on this in like almost 2 months now.
And we're just so I can have context, because I haven't been paying close attention to it. This is still like a P2, P3, or how are we treating this?
I would call it a P2 for now.
Okay.
We will need this eventually to move all the to do CSI migration and move all the dependent libraries out of tree.
I see. Okay,
So
that makes
we'll
sense. All right,
eventually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, so yeah, we'll eventually need it. It's not super urgent now, but we should probably start moving towards this, especially because I think a lot of CSI drivers are just importing this whole package, which contains a ton of unnecessary code for CSI drivers.
Right.
So
actually, I think
Okay.
it would be a good goal to have, for example, your own Google Drive and not depend on anything in Kubernetes. That would be the litmus test to see whether the refactoring has been completed. Util's mount is the first step, but it might not be the last one.
yeah. Yep.
Okay. I'll reach out, trying to figure out what's going on with that, and I'll let's see what section it is on the doc. I'll update the doc. Yep, right here. I'll update the doc with whatever I found out from Travis.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Let's see. I think next item, I think Luis is not here, so we can skip that. And then we were just discussing David's proposal here earlier. So I think that's all we have.
I guess one. Yeah.
So I guess we kind of have consensus on David's proposal, but what are the action items that we need to do?
I think Vlad is working on
I think
that,
this might just be part of overall just cleanup of the documentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just throw out PRs and people can start taking a look at them.
Awesome.
All right.
So let's just tackle this. Yep, go ahead.
So we talked about splitting out the CRD for snapshot to your different repos so that it will be easier for external provisioner to do update if there's any change in the APIs. So it's now a good time to do that.
Yeah, I think we can go create a new repository for this. Do you know how to do that?
I don't think I have permission. Saad.
There's you can create an issue under Kubernetes/org.
Oh, okay. I will do that.
And there's like a questionnaire you can fill out for creating a new repo.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about?
I have a prototype for, it's currently external literature. It's pull request 109 in external literature that rewrites and improves the build rules that we currently have copied into the various repositories. One thing that I wanted to get rid of is this manually setting of the version in the image pushing part.
Agree.
So that if you currently look at most of our repositories, the only difference between master and the release branch is that one does a push to canary and the other does 1.0 canary. And this pull request gets rid of that need to reconfigure inside the repository, which means we can do easier branching because you can just create a branch and you don't need to touch anything inside it. it's overall overhauling, basically improving everything or touching the whole process. I was wondering whether we want to go in that direction. So I would be interested in see whether people have an opinion about this, and if that turns out to be useful.
Yes.
How do we actually manage that in the future? Do we still continue to cut and paste these build rules between repositories, or should we try to come up with a scheme where we can vendor them? I do have ideas for vendoring. It's a bit ugly because you need to vendor non-Golang files, but it's doable. So we could have generic build rules, for example, in the CSI libutils, and import them automatically with dep. That would work. But I guess the first step is that people look at this pull request and see whether that's something that they like.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take a look at this. I definitely want to do away with this hard coding image tags in the makefile.
Yeah, +1. This seems like a good approach, but I'll let Michelle and Luis review it.
Okay, that's all.
All right, awesome. Thank you. We are well over time, so I guess we will wrap up for today and see you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye.